Attempting to build a Timmy Overdrive pedal on Tagboard seemed like a great idea, until it wasn't. I encountered loads of unexpected challenges, and I made a significant mistake that almost derailed the whole project. I've built literally hundreds of pedals, possibly even thousands at this point, most of which have been built at sea, in the Royal Navy under arduous conditions, so I have no clue why I found this pedal so hard. This build pushed me to my absolute limits. Stick around to the end and find out what I did wrong and whether I managed to get this pedal going. Well, I suppose it was only a matter of time before I got stuck into the Timmy, and here we have it. I'm going to be going with this enclosure. So it's sloped enclosure. I finished it in what was sold to me as a Navajo type fabric, but I know it's not going to be that because I got it at a price that would make that impossible. But this is what we're working with. I think it looks cool. I can't think of anything better to go with this Timmy circuit, and this is going to be a beast, by the way. There's going to be 10 tags in total, and we are working with an Opamp on a Tagboard, which is kind of awkward but also extremely fun to do. Okay, let's set the scene here. I wanted a clean, transparent overdrive, and the one that comes to mind is obviously the Timmy. And, well, I've got loads of vintage components and large Tagboards lying around, and I thought, why not put the two together? Classic move, right? Wrong. Sometimes, just because you can do something, doesn't mean that you should do something. So what have we got? We've got our resistors and our diodes and stuff, and also our op-amp. And then we've got our caps. I'm going with 2 massive ITT caps, get in. And then we've got, obviously, the tropical fish, the chiclet. And then I've got all of these as well. It's a 100 PF Hunt's cap. Got a lot of time for these. They sound well in the delay pedal that I do, so thought I might as well give them a try in this too. So where to start? Well, usually I like to start from left to right, which I'm going to go that way around on a Tagboard, left to right. However, if there's an op-amp on there, I like to start with the op-amp socket. And because the socket's going to sit smack bang in the middle, what I'm going to do is run wires or cable coming off each one of these legs. And the best way to do that is to use this uncovered single core wire. I think this is 24 gauge or 26 gauge, one of them. Anyway, I'll have a look and I'll put a link in the description actually for anyone who wants to get the same wire as me. I just take a nice piece of it, wrap it round into like a hook, and then this hook is going to go round one of the legs. I like to start with the 2 middle legs because they're the most awkward, and then you can do the 2 on the ends easier. So once you've crimped it down with your snips, the best thing to do is just solder them in one at a time. So there's one fitted. Now that we have the center 4 legs fitted, I'm going to go ahead and fit the 2 end legs on each side. What I like to do for these is, obviously you don't need wires this long, but I just go longer anyway because it's there, why not? But for these, instead of pointing them out to the sides and then bending them in, I fit them in the direction that they're going to be going. Like so. So I fit them like this. And then you'll end up with some sort of spider, and then what we can do is we can get the 4 legs that are pointing sort of forward and aft, for lack of a better word, in the tags, and then we can bend these directly in line with the tags that we're going to be working with. I'll go ahead and fit the other 3 wires on here. So when you're done, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. Now if we get our drawing up, we can see that actually our IC fits 90 degrees out from what I was thinking, and the little cutout is facing to the starboard side as I look at it, for lack of a better word, to the right hand side. And what we can see is that now the two side legs are going to be our center legs, and they go in, if we count along, 1, 2, 3, the first center leg goes in the 4th tag along, and the next center leg goes in the 5th tag along. So we can count that along on here, 1, 2, 3, 4th tag along and 5th tag along. Easy enough. And if we slide that all the way in, it gives us enough room now to maneuver the next two legs over and give them a snip. Quick break from the impending chaos. If you're more into playing pedals than building pedals, then I've got you covered. I build custom, handmade, one-of-a-kind pedals. And right now, I have a 25% sale off everything on my website. Every last little thing. Until the end of April. This is your last chance this year to get a whole 25% off everything that I build. Please use code TrueGritApril. I'll say that again for the guys at the back who didn't listen. Discount code TrueGritApril gets you 25% off everything. Every last little thing on my website. Thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for keeping the Hello Sailor FX community alive. And then we can slide them into place too.
5 hours later.
There. And now our IC is situated smack bang in the middle of the board where we want it to be. We can simply take our soldering iron and wet the tip. Well, hey. And then give these legs a solder. But first of all, I'm just going to have a quick look and see if there's anything else going into these legs. Now I can see the two on the right hand side, or at the bottom side as it is now, have R7 going into them, and the two on the top, one of them has C2 going into it, but the other one doesn't. So I'm just going to solder that one in place for now. There. Now that will hold the IC in, and we can snip off the excess of these legs just to get them out the way. Now the next we want to look at is our front and back legs, now our left and right legs. All we have to do is look where that meets the tag on the board and then just bend them at that slot. So if we use our snips, we can simply bend it round, push it back a little bit to give us some space, and then fit it in with a nice little bend. And then we can do the same for all of them. If you bend it back on itself a bit, that gives you a little bit of space, so then when you push it back through the tag, it will go in. There. Now, as I'm looking at this, I don't think I'm going to solder any of these in until I get to them, because they have other components going in there, but that's okay. As long as you can get one of them in there and soldered, it's not going to move about, so you're good to go, really. I like to start with the IC just because it's a bit of a pain, because there's all these, there's like 8 connections to make, and what you don't want is components in your way while you're doing it. Seems like a good place to start to me. Right, and flick that in there. On another note, speaking of wetting the tip, I'd love to know in the comments what soldering iron all of you guys are using. I'm using the Hakko FX888D, and I've used this for the longest time, and I haven't even bothered looking at new soldering irons, apart from once Marcus Reeves got me to try out one of these newfangled things which I didn't get on with. But now I'm thinking maybe I need to upgrade somehow, or I've been using this soldering iron now for maybe, I don't know, it could be 10 years by now. I'm thinking maybe I need to upgrade. I'd love to know what you guys use, and if there's anything good or bad about the ones that you use. For example, the Hakko's great because it's reliable, it doesn't turn itself on and off. It does put a lot of heat in there, but it's not as heat as in, like, the tip has no temperature sensing, so it doesn't like recover, if you like, when you're heating something hot up, but it has enough heat in there to do big tags. So I'm like, do I need a new one? Don't know. Anyway, I fancy something new is basically probably a midlife crisis now that I've turned 40. So anyway, now I'm going to start left to right, and I can see on the left the first thing to go in there is R1, which is a 2.2 meg resistor. I'm going to be using this carbon comp. I'll have to give the legs a little bit of a clean because they have all oxidization over them, because, well, it just happens. And this is going in the top left corner. It's going in tag 1, and then it's missing the tag and going into the same tag as our IC leg here. So just about like that. Now I'm going to fit it so then R1 is situated right down this end of the board, mainly because there's other stuff going on here. So I'll bend that leg straight over, and then if I lie it over the tag, I can see that I need to bend this leg just about there to make it go into the tag where I want it to go in. If I cut one of the legs half short, if you like, we can easily fit it in place, he says. There, and I'm just going to situate that right in the middle of the board there. I'm going to solder in this first leg because it doesn't look like, oh yeah, there is. It's C1, but that's going to go in the center, I think. I'll solder that in place now. And then once I've given that leg a tidy up, there we have it, our first component in the board. As regular viewers will know, I like to go down the centre of the board first and then do everything on the outside edges. So next in the centre I can see that there's going to be a jumper wire going from tag 2 on the top to tag 2 on the bottom. I do want this to run underneath our carbon comp resistor, so I'm just going to lift that up a little bit. So then I can slot this underneath and hopefully it will just go in there nicely. Yeah, I find it easier to do the centre line and then move to the outer edges after you've got all the centre components in, so you're not having to work around them at any point. Now quick check, see if anything else is going in there. I can solder the top, but I can't solder the bottom. Perfect. So there's the top solders, and if you go to the bottom there, I can see that we've got R9 going into the second tag along, and R9 is a 10k. Now I've just got some new 10ks, and I think that's it. So rather than think, because you know it could mess up the whole thing, I get the trusty Fluke 101 out. Look at that, yeah, there's our 10k. I was running low on 10ks and I was using modern ones, so I thought I better get something a bit older, otherwise I'll lose my street cred. Anyway, I got a good deal on a load of these. So this is going into the same leg as R1, which is over here. I'm probably going to put this side in first. The problem with this is going to be navigating. So if I give this a bend, trying to navigate this around the 2.2 meg that we've already got in there, and I know I've also got a cap to go across here as well. If I look, C5 is going to go there. I'm pretty sure C5 is a 10 UF on my drawing. Do need to check that, but now you could just solder to the top of this resistor here actually, and then save us having to go. That's what I'm going to do. So rather than trying to stretch over the top and go in this tag, I'm just going to solder the connection right here on this elbow and then snip the excess off. And as long as it's connected this side of the resistor, it's the same as putting it in the tag basically. There, now if we snip the excess off there we have it, that's in, and I can see there's nothing else going into this slot here apart from the two components that are in there, so we can solder that in too. Okay, so on our drawing it's showing C5 as a 10 UF cap, but on the drawing it's a non-polar cap. 10 UF is quite a lofty size to have a non-polar cap, which it's doable because, you know, in some speaker circuits they have a large non-polar cap in, but it just didn't look right to me. So I've gone ahead and looked on free stomp boxes, and on their Tagboard layout, on their Vero layout, I can see that connecting the two bottom pins together where our C5 is this cap here, which is a 10 NF cap, not 10 UF. So 10 nanofarads, not 10 microfarads. I was going to use this non-polar 10 microfarad cap. However, I'm going to go ahead and swap that now for a 10 NF. So this is the 10 NF I'm going to go with. It is an ITT cap. Everyone knows I love these caps. I'm going to clean the legs because they are covered in crud, as with all vintage or NOS capacitors usually are. And it's just going straight up and down between pin 3 or tag 3 and tag 3 on the Tagboard. So that's easy enough. I'm going to sit it quite high off the board, so probably right to the end of my flat nose pliers, or duckbill pliers as I found out they're called over in America. Yeah, so my flat nose pliers, I'm going to go to the end of it. Normally I just go to here, but this will give it a bit more height The enclosure is pretty big, so we don't need to worry about that. And if we just slide it through this top leg, because that's the most congested one, if we can get it in there, that is, right to the end. And then when we snip this leg here, it gives us room to go back on ourselves and slide it in with our IC leg. Now looking at the drawing, there's no other things that go in here, so I'm going to solder both sides. There we are. And now if I tidy that up, that's nicely in place, and that's much better on the eyes than a 10 UF cap would have been. That would have been carnage. Okay, now we're moving on. Bottom row, I can see that we've got R7 going between the two center pins of our IC. And if we look at our drawing, R7 is a 3.3k resistor. Now, of course, I didn't have a 3.3k resistor, so I have got a 2.2k resistor, just a modern one, and an old Philips 1.1k resistor. I'm just going to put them together in series, and then that will make 3.3k. He says I will test it on the multimeter just to make sure, and I'll accept anything in the region. I know the Timmy's a newer pedal, and the components in that are probably bang on. I think, is it Mr. Cochran who makes that? I'm pretty sure he would have used like the top of the top components, so nothing would have drifted. But I'm going to allow for a little drift because basically I'm using old components anyway. So there's our new resistor, which should be about 3.3k. So if we go to ohms on our trusty fluke, as ever, you can get one of these flukes yourself through the link in the description. I do get a small kickback. Oh, look at that, 3.72. That is sorry, 3. Oh my god, my dyslexia kicking in there. It's 3.27. I always do that, always, the last two digits. In fact, the only number that I haven't ever messed up is my service number, funnily enough. It's the only number that I never switched two digits around. Crazy. Anyway, the way that this is now, because they're going into two tags right next to each other, it's quite handy because I can just slot it through the two tags without really straightening the two resistors out to lie flat. So it kind of fits in with where it's going. If I can ever get it in there, that is. There we are. Now, what else goes in these? Nothing. There's some components going on the outside of it, which we'll fit afterwards. But right now, these are all that are going in there, which is good. Good news for us. I've got a feeling this is going to be quite a good looking tagboard, but it does have a hell of a lot of stuff on the outside edge, which I tend not to be too fussed on, but there you go. Right, what's next? So next in this row we've got C7 and then C8 over here. I'm going to tackle this mess at the top. So if you look at our drawing, you'll be able to see that C2, D3, D5, D4, D2, D6 and D1 are all like shoved together. I'm going to do D3, D5 and D4 in the centre, and I'll do the others on the outside edge. So C2 is a 100 PF cap, that's our Hunt's cap, so we will definitely be able to fit that in there. We'll start with that, shall we? The legs are clean. Now, as ever, it is best practice, that terrible way to put the value of this at the top, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put Hunts at the top. In fact, yeah, Hunts at the top, just because I like the brand, what can I say. So if we look at our drawing, we can see that D3, 5 and 4 are all 4148s. which are really common. And again, I always say this, if these were rare and expensive, everyone would want them. So I'm not surprised that they got put in the Timmy, if I'm honest. Here they are. So if we have a look at this now, going into the first leg of C2, which is pin 2 on our IC, we have D3, and that has its cathode pointing towards pin 2, and the anode goes in the fourth pin from the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, so just the other side of our cap. Okay, so I'm not sure I agree with the clipping on this drawing. Doesn't look right to me, but I am going to just make it as it is on the drawing, and if it's wrong, I'll clip out the diodes and I'll mount them on the switch off board. But we'll give the drawing the benefit of the doubt. I really don't see why we're putting two diodes pointing in the same direction next to each other. It makes exactly no sense to me, but there we go. So D4 and D5 are going to go between the top of this Hunt's cap and here, pointing in the opposite direction. So the cathode is going to be pointing towards the anode of D3. The next centerline cap is going to be C7, which is a 47 UF. I've got these, and that's going between this pin here and this pin here. Now to do that, I'm going to straighten the legs out because they're a bit crooked, being as this is an old cap. Give the legs a clean. Now the negative side points this way towards our op-amp and a positive side that way. These caps have a little dimple here which shows you the positive side, so I know that this cap is orientated right that way round. What I'm going to do is bend the legs straight down. I have shown this before, of course. Use my flat nose pliers, good old Nipex, and bend in on itself, and then do the same to this leg, and then we can just situate it on the board where the space, i.e. this first leg is going to bend straight over and come back on itself almost instantly, and then this leg is going to bend about there. I mean, it's an approximation game. It's going to look something like that. And now I want it to sit a bit more central, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to align my flat nose pliers along and then just bend it here, so then I've got long legs, kind of like a forklifty type look. I don't know where my mind goes. And that's going to go into pin 5 of our op-amp, and then it's going to skip a tag and go in there. And because we've left these long legs, we can situate it right in the middle of the board. And looking at our drawing, there isn't going to be too much in the middle here, so that's good. Now I can solder this back leg in place, but the next leg I won't be able to solder because there is something else going in there. Let's give that a tidy up. Ideal, and that takes up a bit of space in the centre of the board that would otherwise be left blank. Now we've got C8, which is another 47 UF cap. Now I was going to use this cap, but that's going to get way too congested, so I'm going to go and find something a little bit smaller that I might be able to sneak in past this one. So here's my 47 UF cap replacement. It is a Samsung cap. Got a load of these on a really good deal, so figured why not use them. I know it's not an axial cap. Looking at this, the negative leg, which on my one is the shorter leg, and we can tell by this band, but also the shorter leg, is going to the second from last pin on the top, which is over here, and then the positive side is going into the same pin as our previous 47, which is the third pin from the end on the top. So what else we got? I'm going to push this right the way over to this top end, so then it's out the way of this other cap. No, it's not going to be completely out the way. Now I can see that We can't solder in this top side because we have indeed still got C4 to go in, but we can solder this bottom side in, so let's get that soldered. That'll at least hold our cap in place while we continue. So they're kind of on top of each other here, but it's just going to have to be like that, I'm afraid. Next in line is going to be our C4, RC4, just C4, which is a 1 microfarad. I'm going to use my flat nose pliers again just to measure it out, and I'm going to use the smaller sides of them just because this is a bigger cap, no other reason really. The enclosure's got loads of room in it, so we can kind of go as high as we like. And this is just going to go right up and down on the tagboard, just how I like them to sit. In fact, I was speaking with my buddy over at Lensing Guitars today. He's been designing some amazing tagboards, and he redid the damn meathead fuzz in like a way that was way easier. In fact, this cap's going to have to lie flat because there's no space for it. Oh well, that's alright. It'll take up space in the centre of the tagboard that was otherwise unused, like so. This tag's not going to be used at all, and this tag's only got 1 cap going into it, so we can solder in both sides of this. There. If I give that a tidy up, now the only other thing that I could do on this, in fact no, C3 looks like it's fitting on the outside edge. So now what I'm going to do is first of all retract my statement about this looking like it's going to be a handsome tagboard, because it's not. I hate the way that this is sitting, caps going axial in the middle, big caps lying down. I'm not a fan. Anyway, now we're going to move to the outside edge. So first things first, we've got C1, which is a 47 microfarad. I do believe that that's a 47 microfarad tropical fish, but let me just get my tester. This is my multifunction tester. I got this off Amazon. It was like 20 quid maybe even less. It's great for testing these caps. There's a link in the description to this one if you want it, and it really does help the show. So this is actually 45 NF. It's close enough for government work for me, so I'll be using it. There is one issue, of course, the legs. Because it's an old reclaimed cap from an old radio, the legs aren't long enough. So what am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to use my solid core wire and just do the hook and loop method and make the legs longer. In fact, I'm only going to make one leg longer. One leg can go directly into the tags, and then the other can be extended like so. Now if we tidy that end up, this can kind of sit on our tagboard like so. No, I'm not happy with how close that's sitting to the board, so I am going to run another one.
A few inches later.
So now that that's done, I can see that we're going into the first tag, and then we're skipping to and going into this tag here. So I'm going to sit it probably high off the board. But if I bend that leg in, and then bend this leg in just the same, and then solder them in place with it sitting out the side like so. Right, so now that's sat off the board at the side. Fine. Next on this side is going to be R2. R2 is a 510k resistor, which of course I didn't have. I've got a 560k and a 10 meg, and I do believe that that takes us down to about 520k, but let me solder this in and then we'll find out. I don't think I could build pedals without my multimeter and my transistor tester, eh? Well, actually, this pedal could, because we don't need the transistor tester. Come on. Right, so that's, oh, look at that. 516, and we're looking for 510. That's definitely close enough for government work. Right, and this one is actually going between the second tag along and then the fourth tag. So I'm just going to bend them straight down on either side, and they're going to go in the center pins now. So the little holes in the center of the tags, it's going to go in like that. If I just get one side in, I'll be able to straighten them up sideways, if you like, and then come in and solder the other side. And then if I tidy up the bottoms and then use my flat nose pliers to straighten these out, because obviously they'll be hot, and I can't tell you how many times I've burnt myself just grabbing hot components like that. Not the neatest work I've ever done, I've got to say. There. Now there isn't anything else on this side until we get all the way up to these diodes, which is going to be a bit of a headache. So I'm going to leave that a sec and come down here and wire in R5. R5 is a 1.5k resistor, and I've got this high precision 1.5k. I love these high precision resistors. They are, well, spot on every time basically, and I think they look good as well, which is always a bonus. And this is going in between our first tag on the bottom row and our third tag on the bottom row. So here, all I do is hold it up against there so I can roughly see where it's going to sit, and then just bend the legs to fit that. After R5, going into the next tag along, which is tag 2, we can see there's two resistors going in there, which is R6 and R8. R6 is a 3.3k and R8 is a 8.2k. Now R8 is going to go on the outside edge because it's stretching all the way down here. I want to keep it out of the way. And R6 is going to go in the center, because with it being a 3.3k and me not having them, it means that I'm using two different types of resistors. So I've got to like wind the legs together. The resistor bodies become bulky when you're using two of them next to each other, so I'm thinking it will be easier to put them in the center and run R8 on the outside edge. It would be much easier, before someone writes in the comments, to just buy some 3.3k resistors, but generally I don't use them for my production builds, so I'm not sure why I would have them in stock, and then when I want to build something out of the norm I tend to just mix and match the values to get what I need. I know it's not ideal, and I know it annoys a lot of people on the internet for some reason. I'm afraid I'm not going to stop. And that goes between tag number 2 and then tag number 4. We can move on to R8, which is an 8.2k resistor. I've got this old one. I'm going to double check the value on that, just because again 8.2k isn't something that I normally use, so I have got this out of my odds and sods. Oh, let's get that way you can actually see it, eh? And that's 8.09, so we're a little bit out, but not by very much. The tolerance of these resistors, being these old resistors, is quite wide, so it's not like a 1% resistor, even though that's not far off being in for 1%, to be fair. Now this is going from tag 2 and it's going all the way up to this tag here, which is pin 5 of our Opamp, where our 47 microfarad cap goes in, and it's also where our 9 volts going to go in. I'm going to run that on the outside edge here, but hold it up above the board so it's not interfering with this cap here. That's R8 now in place, and now we're going to move on to C6, which goes between this tag here, misses one, and then goes into this tag here. It's shown on our diagram as fitting on the outside of the tag board. However, I'm going to be using this for C6, which is a 1 microfarad ITT cap, same size as this here, and sitting that off the board there. Yes, it'll sit there quite fine, but that's a hell of a sit. You know, it's going to take up some real estate inside the pedal, which doesn't matter because there is space, but I just think it's going to look a little bit better mounted there. And then we can also use our, you know, D7 is the only other component that's going anywhere near it, and that can be mounted external just to, you know, just to get it in there. So I'm going to mount this here. It's a big old cap, this. The 1 microfarad non-polar caps usually are, to be fair. And actually I'm going to have to bend R8 out of the way to be able to get my iron in to get to the other leg here without burning the cap. That's another thing. If you think you're going to burn a component when you're trying to solder from the position you're in, just don't solder there, because chances are you are going to burn it. It's better to move stuff out the way and then get in there and do the work and move it back. There we are. This is starting to look like a hedgehog now. I'm not too keen on this layout. It's a bit of a mess, but there we go. What's next? In fact, we might as well do D7 next. And D7 is a 1N4001. I don't actually have any of them. I've only got a 1N4007. It'll do the job. It's just, you know, rated differently. The 007s are usually using amplifier rectifier circuits, but it will be fine in this. And that's going from the next tag along, so it's going in where R8 is. So really we should have put it in before messing about with R8, but doesn't matter. And it's skipping one tag and going in here where our 47 microfarad caps are going in. So really actually I could probably go in the center line here. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go in the center line, and then just I'm going to lie the body of the diode up against the leg of this cap, because then it won't short out, he says. There should be enough room to get it in there. Let's see, and maybe if I stand it off the board quite a way, it will be out of the way of anything else. Let's see if I can just sneak it in there. There we go. I think that'll be alright like that. This of course is just a reverse polarity protection. I could leave it out, but it's on the drawing, it's on the diagram. I might as well fit it. Most people know that I don't normally bother fitting them with my pedals. I feel like people just shouldn't plug them in the wrong way. And then bend it all back in place brilliantly. What could go wrong, eh? This is getting a little bit congested, I'm not gonna lie. Right, now there's no other off-board wiring on this side, which is good. The only thing left to go is our D2, D6 and D1 on this side here, and C3, he says. Why have I got more left over? I've missed something. We'll have a check up at the end and see what... Oh, I've missed R4, which is going to be over here too. Okay, so where to start? I'm going to start with the diodes, why not? Now I know there's going to be 3 of them, so it's 3 1N4148 diodes. There's 2 of them and 3. What are we going to start with? Suppose we'll start with D2. That goes between... Well, it's the same pins as D4 and D5, so it's these 2 pins here. Top edge of this cap and into there. And actually, I could probably lie this one in the center line just to get it out the way. And we can see that our cathode is pointing towards the Hunt's cap, so the opposite way round from D4 and D5. So there's D2 in. Now I'm going to go on to D6, which is going to go from the same pin this end as D2, so same as the cathode, which is the top of our C2, and it's going to point in the same direction, funnily enough, but it's going to not go into the same anode end. It's going to skip one and go into the one afterwards. I can imagine if you were going to build this, it may be an easier option, or less convoluted, congested even is the word I'm looking for, option would be to build it on Vero board, undoubtedly. But where's the fun in that? Like, this one's just going to stick out the side like this. There's nothing else going into this end. So I'll solder that in. Actually, that's a lie. There is some wires going in all over the shop here, but I'm just going to heat the tags up and slot them in now, because there's that many components wired on the outside edge. It would be impossible for me to get them all in place and hold them in place while I'm mounting the board. Now D1 is going to go from the bottom of C2, which is the 5th tag along. So if I just count that out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, the 5th tag along. So it basically misses a tag and goes in. So it's this one here. Oh wait, there, which way round? Oh, look at that. I got it the right way round, even without thinking. Clip the legs to the length that I want them. Then our anode is going into the bottom of C2, which is here, and our cathode is going into the same as the anode of D2. So I'll leave it lying flat, but what I will do is, once I've soldered it, I'll bend it up so it's out the way of the other diode. Tell you what, if I see another diode in the next year, it's going to be too soon. Right, now if we bend that up and out the way, that should be all of our diodes now in place. Next is going to be R4. Now that's quite a stretch, and R4 is a 3.3K, so it's going to be one of these and one of these. To do this one, because it's quite a stretch, I am going to flatten them out. So I haven't done that so far. I've been able to get away with them being like a V, if you like, and standing up on end. But don't think I'm going to get away with that this time, because it's going a bit of a distance. But we shall see. So we are going in the bottom of C2, which is what we've got lots of stuff going in, and then all the way up to the top tag. So these two, are we going to get away with putting this in? I think we are going to get away with putting this in at an angle, you know, probably like that. I mean, at this point, the tagboard's a bit of a mess. Such an awkward circuit to put on tagboard that I kind of get why I think this audio dome, I thought it was audio clone for the longest time, audio dome, I feel his pain trying to figure this one out. It's a bit of an ass. Maybe Lenson Guitars could have a crack at this one as well, because some of the ones he's done lately, he's got some good things coming out soon. He could probably tidy this up, no problem. Kind of hiding it out the way and nothing shorting out on anything else. I mean, this is only 10 tags either side, which isn't that much considering how big the Timmy circuit is, you know. Has anyone had a go at making layouts yourselves? Do you guys do tagboard layouts or even Vero boards or something? Have you transposed the schematic before? I did a video about it not long ago, and it seems like it's becoming a lost art. Now I think that's almost them all, so I have a feeling I'm missing one resistor, because I've still got a 3.3k left, and let's see, if we look at our drawing, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 3.3ks, and we can see on our tag board we've got 1, 2, 3, so I'm definitely missing the 3.3k. I've put in R4, which is here, I've put in R7, which is here, and I've put in R6, which is here. So we've got R3, where is that?
6.5 hours later.
Of course R3 is on one of the pots, it's not actually situated on the board. So well done, Joe. I was about you shut up and stick in your own lane and get it done. Now C3 is a 39 NF cap, and I've got a 39 NF chiclet cap. If we look at our drawing, we can see that C3 connects to P2. P2 comes right the way over to early on in the circuit. So I've got to remember to put that jumper in after I've done this, because otherwise I'll completely forget. So we're going to add it in here, and it's got to go over to here to the next pin along. However, the legs aren't long enough because I reclaimed this cap. So what I am going to do is, if I stand it up and solder it in, we can use some of our uncoated wire to be able to run wire from the next pin along to attach to this cap. So if I put it in there like this, we'll just tighten that up while we're here, and then use one of our offcuts. I mean, you could use the wire or an offcut. And that is going to sit in this tag here, which is the second one along from the top. Like so. I mean, this is how I use my reclaimed caps and resistors and stuff that don't reach. You have to just extend the legs any way you can. I imagine a lot of people just ditch the caps with shorter legs, maybe. I don't know, I don't see why you would, because the cap part of it still works pretty well, or on most of them anyway, especially these old Phillips ones. And so there we have C3 now in place. That is actually all of our board wired up. While I'm here, I'm going to run the underboard connection, so P1 to P1 and P2 to P2. Then we're going to fit our Opamp. So P2 to P2 is the second one along on this top row, which is where R2 goes into. So here, right the way along to the end. Now I'm just going to run some silicon wire. Once that's in, it's easy to measure out how far the wire is going to go, because you know, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. What we do want to be mindful of though is I use my sticky foam pads on the bottom, so I want to leave enough space for them to fit in there somewhere. I think I showed that in maybe a video or two ago on the damn Meathead Fuzz video on how exactly I stick the tag boards down. I got an awful lot of questions about that previously. Right, and there's that in place. Next we've got P1, which comes from the next tag along. Whoa, I've just done that on completely the wrong side. What am I doing? So if you look at this, I've gone between that tag there and that tag there. It's actually the top row because it's upside down. I'm too busy talking rather than watching what I'm doing there. Disgraceful. So it's going to be from this tag here. Of course it's upside down, so it's the bottom and not the top. Round to this tag here. Right, now P1 goes from the third tag along on the top to the third tag from the right on the bottom. So that should be quite easy, he says. The third tag along on the top is here. And I am going to measure twice, cut once on this one, because I've already made one mistake and I don't want to repeat it and get this wrong. Even though I'm pretty sure that this would be the same, even if you did get it wrong going both ways, because it's the third tag along, but we'll see. Right, so the third tag along, 1, 2, 3, it goes in the same as our 10NF cap. Yes, it does C5, and it goes right the way across to the other side. Third tag along. Now this is actually going into what's going to be the ground connection, so it could just run a wire straight from here to ground externally when I'm wiring the circuit up, but I'll probably forget to do that because I'll look at this and I won't see a wire going to ground. I'll forget it, the circuit won't work, and then it'll take me 10-15 minutes maybe to figure that out after the sound test, and I just can't be bothered. So if I just wire it in now, oh no, just clip the end of it, beautiful. And that's why you should never use these, and always use these when you're grabbing hold of your pliers, grabbing hold of your wire with pliers. Well done. Let's see if we can get it in there. There we are. And there's our off-board wiring, our underboard wiring complete. Next step, I'm going to add in the op-amp now, just because it looks like it's going to be a right pain to get it in there. And if this is inside the enclosure, I mean, there is lots of space, but inside here it just makes it a little bit more awkward. So on our drawing we can see IC1 is a CA3240EZ, which I absolutely don't have. Brilliant. I'm pretty sure I bought one for the 5 cats pedal that I recently built, the old satchel clone pedal, whatever. I haven't got that. It is just a dual op amp, so I'm going to be using this. It's a 72D, an NJM 72D. I'm pretty sure it was Simon from JSA that put me onto these. So these are like the super op amps that he was on about in our podcast. Was it about Tube Screamers? I think it was about Tube Screamers, or maybe it might have been about building your own op amps. Anyway, doesn't matter. He said to use these, and so I am. I instantly, as soon as we got off the podcast with him, went and bought them. Now, one thing to note is our notch. This bit here, the little notch out, is facing to the right hand side of the pedal. You have to give the legs a little squeeze before you put it in there. I'm just going to bend that cap out the way to get in and get it in place. And then I'm going to use my flat nose pliers just to situate the legs in the pin. Oh god, actually not going where I want it to go. Brilliant. I think that's in there. What you want to do is make sure that you can see the legs going into each of the socket holes, and then once you're certain that it is, put the back of your thumb on there and just give it a little squeeze until it sits down. You can hear it click when it goes in. If you don't check the legs and make sure they're situated in the holes, when you push it down, it's just going to bend one of your legs, and then the IC is basically useless because they kind of lose their strength, if you like, and then they just bend every time you try and touch them. I bend that cap back in and straighten everything else out, and that is our massive tagboard. It's basically anxiety in a tagboard put together. And here's all the hardware we're dealing with. We have our short lever on switch. If you remember rightly, in one of the previous episodes, this was meant to be an on switch. I pulled it on my pilot and it just so happened to be an on switch. Don't know how I managed to order that. I'm going with gold for the washers and stuff today, so my switch is going to have a gold washer. Why not? Then we've got our gold pin 3-pole double throw switch with, again, a gold washer. Standard, I've switched to these barrel 9-volt DC sockets. I'm going to use a gold washer for that. I don't know why I'm going gold today, but I just am. We're using our normal input and output jacks. I do prefer these ones. And then for knobs, I'm going to be using this, well, potentially using this 1 meg audio drive pot. It's an old one. I think this is Japanese, but I'm not too sure. Pretty sure this is a Japanese one. We've got our volume pot is going to be this 10k audio pot. That is definitely a Japanese one. And then these 250 meg audio tape pots are going to be our treble and bass pots. Yeah, here it is with all the hardware in place. I'm actually really pleased with how this is looking. This fabric looks great on a pedal, if I do say so myself. It's quite detailed and intricate when you get up close. And then here's all the pots and hardware fitted. Next is going to be positioning the circuit board, or the PCB I should say. PCB circuit board? Not the PCB or circuit board, the Tagboard. God, I'm demoting my pedal to a mere PCB. This is always quite an awkward bit because really it should sit smack bang in the middle. And that would look great. However, the way I run my wires, I want space to run them either side. So I'm going to move it right over to the left here. And then I've got space down here to run a channel for my wiring loom all the way around to the 3-pole double throw switch. And we can come round the back here and get to these tags. So then we're not creating loads of wiring runs and stuff. So I think that will be quite acceptable. Here's our tag board now attached. Next, and I did forget this bit, is to tape up the stomp switch so then I don't get any crud on it and have to clean it off later. I almost forgot yet again. This is one of them things that if you do figure it's just an added nose later on, you better not to have to deal with that. Anyway, there we go. In the top left corner, our first wire is the input, and that's going to come round and go to this pin here on our 3-pole double throw switch. So if we start off, helps if I turn my soldering iron on, doesn't it? If we start off going from here, we'll go round the back like the ponytail that I always do, come up here and then round and go straight to it. So like a U shape, and that will give us our line coming along here, which is going to go right the way up to these eventually, and then also the line that's going to branch off and go to this and then to all of these from this way here. I have like a set way of running the wires, and I'm pretty sure most builders do. I always say if you take the back off a pedal, you can almost always tell who built it, and with me, I think you can probably tell some of the periods that I went through. I went through a point in time of using solid core cloth covered wire, and then I went through a stage of using like military spec heat treated fireproof wire, which was a right pain. You couldn't just strip it the way that I strip it. You did have to use wire strippers, which I hate doing. I actually have a little bit of that left, but I'm holding off using it until, well, I mean, I can't get it anymore, but I'm holding off using it for like maybe a nostalgic build or something. So that's where that's going to. Now for this, because there's already a component going into the leg, I've got two choices. I can either try and poke it through the hole next to the component leg after I've heated it up, or I can try and wrap it round the post and just solder it on. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet. You know, I'll probably try and squeeze it through with heating the tag up, to be fair. There you go, it's actually no problem at all to do that. Because there's only one component going in there, it's nice and easy. Right, if we just tidy that wire up and get it running where we want it to run, there's our first wire in. So if we go back to our drawing, we can see that on the top row, the only other things coming off are going to this switch here, which is our diode switch. And the next one along is going to be coming from the bottom of C2, which is this Hunt's cap here. Coming out of this, where this diode goes in, which is D1, and going to the centre of our switch and jumping across to here. So to put that in, I'm going to do the bit that goes to the Hunt's cap first. And again, there's only one component going in there, so we should be able to just squeeze it in. He says, yep. and then we can run it straight up here. I'm going to actually go closer to this pot here, just because I think that's where my other wires are going to go to, so I'll make it nice and easy. And then if we go to the second, when we're cutting it out, we're going to go to the second pin along, because we're joining the two center pins together, and we can just strip the wire long enough to reach over both of them. It's a really weird way of wiring the switch, and I'm not exactly confident that it's going to work the way that the diodes are. I'm not really au fait with this circuit, and I don't plan to get really acquainted with it, to be fair. This is literally painting by numbers, which probably isn't the best way of building, to be fair. But I'm hoping that when we do the sound sample it just works, and I'm just not reading the layout properly. So there's our two center pins joined together, and then next on the top row is the next pin along, which is one after the top of our, oh no, it is the top of our hunt cap. I've put that in the wrong place. Brilliant, well done, Joe. I need to be one over. Of course I do. Okay, so this is the point where I was starting to realise that I had some sort of a problem. Back in my Navy days, when I was actually at sea, I would not let any of my team call a defect a problem. I would say to them, this isn't a problem, it's a chance for us to show command how amazing we are at our jobs. And they would go, the chief's right, we are amazing at our jobs, let's smash this out. So let's roll up our sleeves, dig in, and see if we can get this pedal working. And that's why you're meant to measure twice and cut once, because there's me putting it in the wrong slot. If I hadn't looked properly, I could have added the next wire in a long slot and put everything out then, and then basically every wire would have been wrong. So now the top of this hunt cap, where this diode goes into, yeah, D6 is going to be our, that one's going to be our other pin, which is going to go to, on our drawing, the bottom here. I'm kind of looking at this switch that way on. So this bottom one is a purple wire on our drawing, if we have a look, and that comes down to the bottom of D2. Why do I have a feeling that should be a 3-pole double throw switch? It is. So look at this. That's why I'm not understanding it. So this center switch is meant to be a on off on switch and have 3 positions, not an on on switch, which is why I just could not get in my head how the thing worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to remove this switch, which is helpful. Right, there's the wires removed for it. I'm going to go ahead and swap that switch out for the same one that's an on off on switch. Again, you really need to read the schematic or the layout before you start building, otherwise you're going to make the same mistake as me. This is much better now. 3 positions means that it's off in a center position, and that makes sense. Wires are now attached. Now we're going to move on to the next tag along. No, miss a tag, the tag after that, sorry, where this diode goes into right here. That's going to come up as we look on our drawing and go into the bottom right tag on our 3-pole double, on our double pole double throw switch, and that's also going to be linked along to this top tag too. So them two are linked together. So when it's in either up or down position, it's connecting these two together, but in the center position, it's not connecting to them. That makes sense. That's our double pole double throw switch all wired up now, ready to go. And on the top row, the last tag that we've got, or the last wire, sorry, that we've got to wire into is this pin here, the very last one, and it is going to base pin 3. So from here to base pin 3. This is an awkward one because I want my wiring loom to come round and go up here. I'm not really keen on it disappearing this side, but needs must, I'm afraid. Now we're on to the bottom row, and the bottom left we can see that we're going into our our treble pot. Same, pin 3. I'm just going to run that straight round. It's going to come down the back here, past our ponytail, and round this wiring loom and to there. Next up is our 9 volt, and that is going to come round to the bottom of R8 here, You can see on our drawing that 9V DC goes in there. It is the only 9V connection, and it's going to run all the way round up to here. It's going to go through both of our 9V pins. I mean, the center one's only a battery connection, but I use that because I don't use a battery. I use that to run the current limiting resistor off for our LED, which I haven't fitted yet. Normally I fit the LED at this point, or before this point, but it's kind of slipped my mind, if I'm honest. I'm going to have to put that in a second. There's our 9V now run. The wire's a bit messy, but we can tidy that up with 1,000 cable ties later on. Next we move on to our ground wire, which is fed from the end, from the left, which is, funnily enough, the negative half of our diode, our 1N4001. But if you remember, I only had 4007. It's going to go in right here. Actually, while we're here, rather than just soldering that straight in, I'm going to run a solid core wire coming straight from this connection here, going to the center connection of our 3-pole double throw switch, and that's because that's going to be the ground for our LED. So rather than running an extra wire round to it, I might as well just tag it into this bit here. Kind of two birds with one stone type thing. I'm just going to run this ground wire right the way around here. It's going to come up, go to this ground on our DC jack, and then come across the top of these two jacks. If we look at our drawing, I've actually missed a few wires off, of course I have. Going from our drive pot, pin 1, round to the bottom of C2, there's a wire going there, and then also there's another wire coming from the other end of C2 going to the pin 3 on our gain pot, our drive pot, and then it also goes to our treble pot, pin 1. So I'm going to go ahead and run them in now, and I'm going to run them along the same wiring loom as we've got here. So them wires are now sorted out. The treble pot on the first pin on the left hand side has now got a wire going through to our Hunt's cap, which is C2, and then the bottom side of the Hunt's cap is also going round to our 1 meg audio gain pot, or drive pot as it's labelled on here. Another thing that we haven't added in is between the wiper on the drive pot and this pin here is also another 3.3k resistor. So these two, we've got our 1.1k and our 2.2k. I'm going to twist them together and make a 3.3k and add it between them two pins. Our next connection on the bottom row, if we get our drawing up, we can see we've just wired in the treble pot from this tag here, and now we're going to move all the way along to this tag here, which is the 4th tag along from the end, which is where C6 goes into, and we can see we've got this long wire here that goes to our volume pot. So I'm going to follow this wiring route here, go round here, all the way round to our volume pot in this top corner, and it goes into pin, well, it's labelled up as pin 1 on our drawing, so this left hand side pin. I'm going to wire that in first. There's our first pin on our volume pot now wired in. If we move one across on our tag board, we come to where our negative or our ground wire come in, and it also P1 also come from this position, which is attached to the other side of the board. But what I missed was on the other side of this tag, there was also a wire going from there and round to the other outside lug on our volume pot. So I'm going to run that now from here, which is quite congested. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hook and loop method and go from our diode. I'm going to go from the leg on the diode and run it around the same wiring route. Seems like that would fit in with it. I don't know how I missed this bit before, but there you go. Honestly, this pedal build was humbling. I thought I was just building a Timmy Overdrive pedal. It turned out I was getting a crash course on why layout matters and why paying attention to what you're doing matters. I mean, as I said before, I've built literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of pedals, and I still made silly mistakes. It just goes to show you that you really do need to check your work and pay attention to what you're doing. Or film yourself, go back, watch the film and figure out what you did wrong. I had a message off one of my old work colleagues, my old shipmate. In fact, he was actually my old boss. He was the warrant officer on board HMS Kent. He's just ordered, well, he hasn't just ordered, sorry. He's just got the first pictures of his Zona guitars. I forget what the exact model it is that he's ordered, but he spec'd out a custom Zona guitar. It's fantastic. They do like these really weird, they're kind of like Viking inspired bridges that he makes himself. My old boss Bones has just got the first pictures of his in like an aged black. Looks fantastic. And then there's this handmade Viking-y type bridge that's been hand aged as well. It just looks cracking. But we're planning on getting together and doing a bit of a gear day. I can't wait. So I need to figure out what gear I've got to show him. Yeah, I don't think he's seen my Fender Showman yet, or at least played through it yet anyway. Yeah, he got this guitar made up. So when he left the Navy, he said, I want to get a nice guitar made, like to remind me of my time in the Navy or whatever. And he got one made up with like grey, battleship grey metal panels all riveted together like a flying V that had like the ship's pennant number on and a few other bits. It's fantastic. Light as a feather as well. Pretty sure that come from a brand called, I want to say Wasteland Guitars. I do follow them on Instagram, and they do these like end of the world apocalyptic type builds. It's class. It's like if you imagine the world's had a nuclear holocaust and now people are scraping guitars together. That's what you'd imagine them to look like. It's mad. But yeah, anyway, he's got a few good guitars, and I think he's only been round to the workshop once since it was finished, so that should be fun. Right, there's that wire in place. Now, the next tag along, if we get our drawing up, we can see that there is a wire coming out of that and going to pin 2 on our bass pot over here. Actually, that's a good point. What guitar related YouTube channels are you all following? Like what's the things to look out for? Obviously I'm watching that pedal show. What guitar channels are you watching? Obviously that pedal show and obviously the JHS show. They kind of go without saying. I watch a fair old bit of Rhett Shull on Dipped in Tone, which is his podcast, with Zach from Mythos Pedals, both fantastic. But yeah, I'd be interested to know what everyone else watches. Actually, speaking of famous YouTubers and what to watch, I actually had where am I going with this? I actually had Andy from Andy's Demos, Pro Guitar Shop Demos, comment on one of my videos not long ago. That's like the highlight of my career. What a guy. I couldn't believe it. At first I was answering him back, like just chatting away as if he's a normal person. I mean, I know he is a normal person and not someone that I've been watching on the internet for about 15 years. It's on the drawing. It actually doesn't show our tone pot, which is where we're going to go next. Our tone pot connected up to anything. The center wiper, it's showing that's not connected to anything. That is false. It has to be connected to something, otherwise the pot does nothing. So I'm going to go and have a look at some of the drawings and see what we can come up with. This is how I search for all of my stuff, by the way. I just searched the name of the pedal, Overdrive, or whatever, Timmy Overdrive, and then put layout at the end, and you'll get all of these different drawings up. This guy here, it comes up as Mark, his name is. I think his name's Mark Hamill, and that's because John from my podcast, John Mulholland, Space Wolf, he knows him, so that's how I know who he is. And actually, we just had Aaron on from Dominion Electric, and he lives down the road. He lives 15 minutes away from him. But this guy has done just about every circuit that I've ever built. So I tend to rely on his circuits. And if we just get his one up, it'll tell us exactly what's going on with our tone pot. So treble pot 2 and 3 go together, which is the side that is attached to the diodes. And the other side of it, treble pot 1, is going to, if we follow it along, bloody 8 Vero, going through a 1.5k resistor and going to this leg here of our Opamp. So it's this wire here on the bottom corner. So now we know where we are. We can find it on our drawing. Okay, so when we looked at that drawing then, the side that come to this pin here on our op-amp through this 1.5k resistor is this wire here, and that comes all the way round our wiring loop and goes into here. That's the side that's not connected together, and the side that is connected together is the side that comes from over here from our diodes through to here. So that means that the link is missing between what's labelled up as pins 1 and 2 on our drawing, what I would call 3 and 2, but these two here should have a link together. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that link in now while I'm thinking about it. All I can see that's missing from the potentiometers now is that output, which is coming from volume pin 2. So I'm going to add that in now. Just going to go straight from volume pin 2 right the way round to this pin here, the front, as I'm looking at it, right hand side pin, because this is going to be where our circuit comes out again. I did actually rewire one of the recent video builds. I did the Zen drive, the Tagboard Zen drive. I've actually not long just rewired that one because I sold it at the Birmingham Guitar Show to Craze Fandango, but when the pedal was off, there's some sort of oscillation going on in the background. I'm assuming it's because it had so much gain, kind of like my Anchor drive does. That's obviously an issue, so we rewired the 3-pole double throw, so then the input and output to the circuit were grounded when the pedal's off, just to get rid of that. And now it's having an issue when it's on full treble, I think he said, so I need to have another look at it, which is pretty much means that it's a case pedal. Anyway, Craze Fandango, if you're watching, you are on my hit list. Apologies, I will get to it. My time seems to be pretty taken up at the minute. I probably should get cracking on doing some actual work as opposed to making all these videos, but this is what I like doing, so I don't advise using these little green pots. They're a pain to do. They're real smooth in action and they sound good, but they're a pain in the arse to use, if I'm being honest. Speaking of pots, we've got Chris Vincent from R2R Electric on the podcast next. Absolutely cannot wait. I mean, Adam from Dominion and Mike from Seeker in our 2 previous episodes were pretty fantastic when it come to fuzz, and now I know Chris is massive into fuzz, but even more so, man after my own heart. He's a big treble booster fan, so that should be super interesting. I can't wait to hear his insights on it all. Right, so there's that. Now we're going to go on to the standard wiring stuff. So I think next up, I mean, we've got our air fitted, we've got our 9-volt fitted, we just haven't done the LED. I think next up I'm going to do the signal for input and output on our jacks. There's both of our input and output jacks wired up, going into here and here respectively. Before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and add our true bypass link, which is this pin here to this pin here. All I do is I take an offcut of my previously used wire, snip it down a little bit and skim both ends, give them a twist. Then we can tin both ends of it, like so, and just slot them through the relevant tags on our 3-pole double throw switch, and then we're away. The last bit is going to be to sort out our LED. One thing to note is with an LED, as most people will know, you do need a current limiting resistor, and that sets how bright the LED is. I usually go for something maybe in the 5k range. That's my preference with the LEDs I have. You can fit the LED to either side, the resistor to either side of the LED. So normally I fit it to the cathode, to the negative side, and that comes up to this switch here, and I run it off the back of the switch. Great. But where this is situated here in this enclosure, there's loads of space here. So what I might do is drop our current limiting resistor from this pin here on our DC jack down and then across, and I can use a really nice resistor here because you'll see it, and then attach it to the live or the anode leg of our LED, and then just run a wire around our big wiring loom and into the back of this. Or I could even fit another resistor here like a low value one, just so then it looks good. I am indeed going to go with 2 resistors. I've got this 1.5k resistor that I actually bought to make amplifiers out of. I bought these when I was making train wreck amps from, where did I get them from? Oh, it'll have been from Modulus Amplification up in Scotland, I believe they are. They make fantastic amp kits, and if you want to see how to build a train wreck, I've got a 3 video series. That's a little bit terrible on the film run side because it was one of my first videos, but I did a 3-part series on how to build them. That's where I got that one from. And then I've got this old 5.1k resistor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the large resistor up this end on the positive side on show, and then just so then this switch is wired up the same as I normally do, I'm going to add a 5k resistor there. So it's going to be in total 6.5k, which is quite a lot of resistance, but it also helps the LED to not be too bright. And that should be really the last connection in here to solder, I think. Let's check. There, we get rid of that for a start. All of our pots are connected up. Our jacks, the DC jack, everything on this switch. I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and get some cable ties on this before we fire it up. Now really, if you're building a pedal like this, what you should do is test the pedal first, then put the cable ties on, but I just can't live with these wires flapping around. It gets on my nerves. So I'm going to go ahead and sort that out now. Okay, so I've added in 2 cable ties, but while I was doing it, I got thinking about our treble and bass pots. They're just not wired up right. If we look at our drawing, we can see that number 1 on the treble side is going towards the diodes. But if we look at the Vero layout from Mark, who I completely trust because I've used all of his drawings before, he shows 2 and 3 joined together goes to the diodes. So that to me says that this wire here on, I would call pin 1, but is labelled up as pin 3 on our drawing, that wire should be on this side and joined together with the wiper, and these 2 should be over here on what I would call pin 3 and on there calls pin 1. You watch, it'll be wrong now. I'll have to clip them off and swap them back over. No, I think I'm right. Here we have all of our cable ties now in. Good to go. It's looking good. I've put a few extra in there just to annoy Glyn. Why not? One thing I will note is that I've just tested this pedal and it is super noisy. Well, in the center position on this switch here, it's got the most gain and it's really, really noisy. So I'm going to go ahead now and show you how you can get rid of noise in your pedals with one simple trick. Okay, so stand by to your ears for this one. So there's a real high-pitched whining noise going on, and at first I thought it may be something to do with like the amount of gain in the pedal or the wiring loom, and that I could just dial it out by using caps in my normal method. However, I was completely wrong. It is actually something to do either with the gain pot or something along them lines. Let's have a little listen. So if I move the gain pot around, you see we get this high pitch whine back, and it's affected by the treble, which by the way I've now wired in the wrong way round, so I'm going to have to change them back. And it's also affected by the bass pot, which is also wired in the wrong way round, so I'll be changing that back. But it disappears and comes back when you use it disappears and comes back when you use the gain pot, which is annoying. So oh, actually, hang on a minute. Can anyone see what I've just seen? If we get our drawing back up and look at C8 and C7, we can see clearly that the ground comes in here and it's attached to the positive end of both of our electrolytic caps. Wow, I can't believe I hadn't noticed that. So let's go back to the Mark drawing, the Vero layout, and we can see that the positive end of the caps do not go to ground and negative end should go to ground. So first things first, I'm going to change over both of these caps and make them go to ground the right way around. I may have to swap this one out for something a bit smaller just to get it in there properly. I'm going to swap them round and we'll see what that does to the noise. If it's not that, then I'm going to go with it being this really old pot. I was trying to be clever, putting an old pot in there maybe that didn't work out too well for me, but let's see. So here's where I am. I've swapped out both of these caps and put them so then they're negative, so now going to ground, because I feel like that's how it should be. Regardless, it didn't make all that much difference. It took away some of the crackliness of it all, but I don't think that was the issue. Now I'm just in a process of removing this 1 meg pot and putting in this 1 meg pot. It's just a modern one, makes no difference. So I've got a new 3.3k resistor, and all I'm going to do is I'll mount that now before I put the pot in the enclosure, just because it's easier to solder the resistors through the two little holes here rather than wrapping them around them legs once it's in there. So we'll get them soldered in, and then I'm just going to replace this pot and see if that makes a difference. If not, I'm thinking it might be an issue with maybe the op-amp. I don't know, I'm kind of firing in the dark here, so if anyone can spot the issue easily now, please write it in the comments and let me have a look. So if I put that pot in here, I'm just going to leave it in loose for now, just until I've figured out this problem. There you go. I did swap my treble pot round to the right way, which I completely messed up. Oh well. It almost sounds like there isn't a ground made, but that wouldn't change when you adjust the treble pot and stuff, so it can't be that. Right, let's put that in. And I can hear now, I don't know if you can hear that from my headphones. That hasn't fixed it at all. Brilliant. So it disappears with the gain control at 0. And the bass control affects it. And so does the treble control. The volume control does not. It's interesting. I'm going to go ahead and have a check over and make sure there isn't a connection that I've put in somewhere into the wrong location, which, you know, I've been known to do in the past. Okay, what a weird and wonderful ride this has been. Would you believe I had 2 potentiometers defective, one after another? So both of these old, in fact it was 3, both of these old pots and then one new pot which I think I've chucked in a bin, all 3 of them defective. I'm flabbergasted. Almost never happens. Right now, unfortunately, I've got a linear taper pot in there. It's just going to have to stay in there. So the gain is now linear. It's not the best. Whatever. So we finally got that. Also, the pot wiring is completely wrong for the treble and bass on this drawing. I'm not too sure what was going on there. I have redrawn it, and let's take a look at that now. As you can see, the treble, oh, I haven't put in a second treble wire. Well done, Joe.
6.5 hours later.
Treble 1 goes to pin 1 on our IC now, and pins 2 and 3 on our drawing here, which I would call 1 and 2. I'm not going to keep saying that now. Pins 2 and 3 on our drawing go right the way around to this 1.5k over here on the bottom row. Hopefully you took a screenshot of the new wiring, and then you can use that. It's much easier. It works. What I have done is, and you'll see now, is I've disconnected this switch completely. They've tried to add in audio dome, or right. I'm not trying to pick him up for anything, because he's obviously putting free content out on the internet, and I hate it when people pick me up for my builds. Actually, that's a lie. I don't hate it. I quite enjoy the banter, but I think it's a bit hypocritical to start criticising someone's work when I'm not putting stuff like that out myself. So I'm not going to. But what I don't really like doing the wiring for the switch the way that he's done it. He's got like a tag on the board with floating components. I'm going to sack all that off, and this switch here, if we go over to our mark drawing, it says here, for additional clipping, take a feed out from Opamp pins 1 and 2. So it actually shows you on the drawing where to take them from. And it's pins 1 and 2, or it says you can take it from treble 2 and 3 or drive 3, which is where I'm going to take it from. So the best way to do it, and I think I'll probably draw a picture to explain this, is these two lugs here are our in and our out of our extra clipping. So one side of the clipping will come in here and the other side will come in here, and that's basically going to be either side of our diodes. I mean, these diodes are 2 diodes in series going each direction, so there's 4 in total, 2 pushing one half of the signal and 2 pushing the other half of the signal, like we've discussed before in plenty of videos. But what these do is stack another 2 diodes on that as well. And what the clipping option on Mark's picture does is it gives you either no extra in the center position, or you can have 2 symmetrically up here, or 1 which will cause asymmetrically down here, and that adds the diodes to the switch. So first of all, I'm going to tidy up this switch. I may just replace it for a new one. Actually, I'll probably replace the switch for a new one. Then I'll talk you through the exact wiring, so then we all know exactly where we are, and it'd just be much easier to follow doing this. In fact, right now I'm wishing that I'd just done a Vero board build in a smaller enclosure. I feel like this is unnecessary. Okay, so having a look at it a bit further now, we can just go from pin 3 and pin 1 on our drive pot round to these 2 center lugs on our 3-pole double throw switch. Sorry, our 2-pole double pole double throw switch. And that's the same as going from the treble or whatever. So I'm just going to go from over here. And first things first, I'm just going to strip and tin the end of this, and I'm going to feed this round the back of the LED, so then I'm not creating another line on here. So if we go round the back of the LED, we can get to the back of these pots, and I'm just going to heat up the pad and feed this in. And then we can follow the same wiring line basically, which is, as everyone knows, I really do hate adding more like looms, if you like. It just looks untidy, even though this pedal's really annoyed me, and it's probably a lot more untidy than I would prefer. But to be fair, this has been a right pain. So that's going to go on this side. I did end up just cleaning this double pole double throw switch off. It's a brand new one, and it would have probably took longer to fit a new one than it did to sort this one out. So I've got to say, I haven't enjoyed this build. It's been a bit of a mission. The drawing hasn't been really the best. I think what I am going to do is ask my buddy over at Lens and Guitars to have a little look at this one. He'll be able to fix any of the defects in the layout, if indeed it's not just me looking at it wrong, because you know that's entirely possible. And also he'll be able to come up with a bit of an easier layout, I think, to follow. He has a knack for it. Like, he's just finished a Tagboard clone that's the size of an amplifier, or a small amplifier. He's doing like some really big builds at the minute. They remind me kind of like the Peace Hill Effects stuff. Looks a bit like that in its format, and obviously without the valves and stuff inside, but super cool. I think he didn't realise how much of a market there is for like really expensive effects, because obviously the clone has got like 4 Tagboards in or something stupid like that, and he uses all high-end amplifier style components. So like the caps are all rated to like 600 volts and whatnot. It's quite a beautiful internal, really. All we have to do now is add in symmetrical and asymmetrical clipping. Now they should be 4148 diodes, which you know everyone loves, and that's what's in the Timmy. But as this is an added extra, I'm going to use some 1M4007s, just because I like how these sound more, and I figured after this pedal's put me through everything that it's put me through so far, I'm using them. Now these, for the symmetrical side, you want to make sure that you've got the anode and the cathodes pointing in opposite directions, of course, because we want to clip both halves of the signal. And I'm just going to fold it over once on each side, and then them legs there are going to be the legs that go into my switch. If anyone's going to build this, I'd love to know what diodes you're planning on using for the build, or if you're just going to stick to the 4148s. I always clip one leg longer than the other, just so then when you're trying to feed it in, you're only feeding one leg in, and then once that leg's in, the next leg will touch the tag further along, but you're already in, if you know what I mean. Now all I'm going to do is just point them up in the air, so then they're out the way and they look a bit better. Now before I put the cable ties on this time, I am going to give it a test out, because as we know in the past, it's not always worked first time, has it? Right, let's give this a test. Some interesting observations and discoveries when I went to test the pedal. I really didn't get on with the JRC 45580. It sounded fuzzy, muffled, and I know there's loads of people who say that ICs don't make a difference to tone. Well, this thing sounded really bad. It sounded okay when I was running the TC Electronics wiretap, so the digital signal, it sounded fine. However, as soon as I plugged my P90s into it, not a chance. It sounded terrible. So I did go back to the hi-fi style chip, but the problem with that is it's hi-fi style chip, IC, Opamp. I hate chip, not American, sorry guys. Anyway, the problem is when I flick this into the higher gain set in the middle position, I'm getting this noise, which is horrific. I mean, it gets worse. Worse and better depending where you've got the control set, so it doesn't sound great. Anyway, but it does disappear if I put it does disappear if I put a cap across pins 1 and 3 of our gain pot. No sound, no sound. So I'm going to go ahead and solder that in, and then we'll see what it does. But the sound of this isn't really isn't doing it for me. It's really low gain. It's not just a little bit low gain. It's like almost pointless even having it. That makes sense. I'm not sure that's how it's meant to sound. I've never actually had a Timmy. I have had a Venuram Jam Ray and stuff, and that had more gain than you can shake a lamb's tail at, even though it's a low gain overdrive, quote unquote. So now with our cap in place, does it do the same thing? Did the gain right up, volume more? No. Now let's get on to the sound sample. Okay, I think it's clear to everyone that that sound sample sounded terrible, and there's definitely something wrong with this. I haven't quite figured it out. And then I thought to myself, what usually goes wrong? So it's going to be from this tag here. Of course it's upside down, so it's the bottom and not the top. Round to this tag here. I think I've put the underboard connections in the wrong place. And I did that while I was talking about making sure that you don't put them in the wrong place. I'm pretty sure of that. But I've slept since then anyway, and I'm ready to go. So I think, in fact I can see right now already, that we're meant to have connected this pin here over to this pin here. But I think that I soldered it to this one here, which is completely wrong. Which means that this cap is the 39 NF cap. Is not actually going to anything. It's just there on its own. So what I'm going to have to do is get my snips underneath this board and see if I can snip that wire off without lifting the board. I mean, I can lift the board. It's not going to be a massive hassle, but I think I've just snipped it there. And then if we slide it out the side potentially. I'm just going to lift the board. It's too much messing about. If we lift that board up, I can just see underneath it. There it is, right there, going into the wrong tag. So I'm going to snip that off. Push it out the side and it should pop up here. I can't believe that. That's it, literally while I was talking about it. But all of these problems could well have been down to the fact that the base control was attached in a wrong position. I'm pretty sure it's the base control. So if I slot this up here now and attach it into this tag, we should be able to do another sound sample and see where we are. So now we have it connected to the other end of our 39 NF cap, so C3. And if we check with our Fluke 101, go from the second tag along on the top row, which is labelled P2 on our drawing, over to this tag here. Now we can see we have a connection. So I'm hoping that this will give us a better sound when we go to the sound sample now. And it may even solve all of the problems that we had before. I may even clip out this cap over here that I added in for a bit of noise control. I'll give this a little test, and what I found was there's still some sensitivity around the input over here. This is the input to the circuit. So what I did was run a solid core cable or wire straight from the input pin on here round straight to the cap, the input cap, just to see if that takes away any of the sensitivity. It's still a bit sensitive. I'm wondering if it's just the way that I've run this wiring loom. So I'm going to snip this off and I'll hide that in the loom and we'll go with the solid core. But also, look what I found with this tropical fish cap. Let me just plug everything in. You'll be able to hear some odd noises going on in the background, and that's probably the camera gear and the lights around this. But also, look at this. If I tap all of these caps, nothing. Basically nothing throughout the circuit, which is fine. And if this was an amplifier, believe me, I wouldn't be using my fingers to do this. But look at this if I tap the input cap. Now I'm thinking that that sensitivity might be coming through in the sound. And another interesting thing is that if I use my 470, I nearly said 470 NF then, 470 PF cap, and go between ground or earth and our input. I don't know if you can hear that now. No, it's not much quieter, but before it was making the pedal super quiet, which is kind of what I do when I add a transformer in there. But at the minute, that's the thing that I'm worried about, is that. I'm going to go ahead and just swap that cap out for a different type of cap and just see if that affects it in any way. Okay, so now we've got a modern Panasonic cap in there. Modern, I say it's modern, it's like 80s, but modern enough. Now the question is, does it pass the touch test? I mean, all of this is still pretty quiet. I mean, there's still noise there, but I'm not convinced that that's as loud as it was before. And the pedal overall seems quieter, there's less fizziness in it. I'm going to go ahead and get this boxed up and we'll do a sound sample and see where we are. And now we're on to the bit that everyone's been waiting for. It is of course the sound sample. But before we get there, I'd like to just remind you that I have 25% off everything on my website. 25% off with discount code TrueGritApril. In all capital letters, TrueGritApril. Thank you for supporting the show. If you like this video, please do give it a like. For some reason, people watch it and don't like. I don't understand that. Helps YouTube know that I give people value. If YouTube knows that, they'll share my video to more people and my channel will grow. Thank you.